Und mit diesem Intro herzlich willkommen zu einem neuen Let's Play. Sunlight. Die meisten von euch würden das wahrscheinlich nicht kennen. Das ist ein Indie-Spiel, was gemalt ist tatsächlich. Es ist eine Reihe von Bildern und ich habe darüber nur Gutes gehört. Natürlich machen die Graphics auf High und nicht auf Low. Und ja. Die Musik machen wir erfahrungsgemäß ein bisschen leiser, aber damit wollen wir auch nicht lange in den Optionen rumhängen, sondern reinstarten. Machen wir uns ein Bild von dem Spiel.
Welcome. Are you sitting comfortably? Are you focused and not thinking about whatever's bothering you these days? I'm not here to test you. Please relax. Let your thoughts come and go and listen as they fade away in the distance. For better or for worse, this is where your life has brought you. Looking at a screen, listening to me. Imagine, for a moment, that you've just had a child. It's healthy, but unfortunately also completely blind. For their whole life, they will live in the dark and not see a thing. Their perception of reality is something that you might never be able to comprehend. How would you describe the world to them? What can't be touched or heard, smelled or tasted? How would you describe sunlight? By what it does? Or how it feels on their skin? I think I'd play them this piece of music. First composed by Tchaikovsky in 1878, these rays of light have traveled through decade after decade, finally reaching your ears this very moment. You have also traveled far to get here today, but you're only passing through and should probably get going. While you're here, I'd like to tell you a story. It all happened to me when I was young, walking in a forest much like you are. Those were days filled with boundaries and rules, of no running in the hallways, don't do this or that or the other. With my world full of fierce discipline, I walked the forest to breathe. One day, deep in the woods, I found a funny-looking tree, crooked, old, and wrinkly. With little work, a few bits of bark became huge ships. Calm creeks turned to ferocious oceans. I can still recall the people I imagined dragged downstream with a sense of guilt. As I gazed back upon the old tree, I noticed something peculiar. It was crying, every crumple like eyes closed tightly, clear drops streaming silently down its wrinkly skin. So I did, as children do, tasted it. Not because it looked tasty, but to figure out what it was. The first drop made my tongue tingle. Second made it prickle. And the very moment the third landed on my tongue, a profound sensation spread through my chest. Undefinable, like thirst, both vague and specific. Though one thing was clear. Something was changing within me. I remember breathing in and out,
Feeding
the fire.
Was sind wir? Laufen wir so langsam?
The following day, I woke to a slight prickle in my fingertips. I studied them closely, discovering circular ridges in the foreign landscapes of my skin. The prickling soon slipped my attention.
It would be another week until it returned, a wave of gentle needles moving over my skin.
A limb falling asleep, perhaps? I did not start worrying until it returned the third time, first making its way up my neck, before engulfing my skull completely from behind. I could even feel the tiny needles covering my eyeballs. But it did not stop there. I held my breath as the smallest thorns crawled around my lips before spreading into my lungs and stomach. My awareness spread with it, and I remember the strangest sensation of my mushy dinner in there, as if I held its remains in the palm of my hand.
My hand. Okay, ich komme hier nicht so nicht viel zum Reden. Wir sollen anscheinend hier Blumen einsammeln, soweit ich das sehe. Scheinen die besonders leuchtend dargestellt zu werden. Der Urbaum, mit dem wir gesprochen haben, ist auch irgendwie gar nicht mehr da.
My body took control and opened my mouth, an explosion of air rushing into my lungs. The tinkling spread with it through an endless web of veins, soon reaching my beating heart. For a moment, I stood in awe of the activity within my body. I felt my heart beating faster and my skin sweating. Your body is your only vessel in this world, and when it misbehaves, The claustrophobia is total. Seek help, I thought. And at that very moment, the tingling needles shot from my brain down through my spine. I felt them scatter through my upper leg. My muscles contracted to lift my knee. My body weight shifted forward, and a shock wave spread from the foot sole as it landed softly on the ground. The process repeated itself in greater detail for every step. I was overwhelmed, but my body kept moving. I did not at all feel like the boss giving directions. It all happened automatically, and I was simply along for the ride. Like you.
Machen wir hier lieber die Subtitles an, weil irgendwie manche von denen haben doch schon einen leichten Akzent irgendwie gefühlt. Also kann sein, dass ich das höre, aber ich möchte alles verstehen und irgendwie ist das schon ein wenig hinderlich dann manchmal. Aber was machen wir gerade? Was machen wir? Ist das der Anfang? Ist es das Intro? Ich hatte darüber gelesen, dass es ein Baumwachssimulator sein sollte.
The doctor's office was cold and white. Crossing the floor felt like a polar expedition. My parents, distant features of the landscape. I wanted to explain, but was unable. My lips and tongue engaged in an intricate choreography, myself in the audience observing the words performed. My lips muttered, "I'm sure it will pass," while my thoughts were crying for help.
Was ist passiert? Was ist passiert?
But I stopped paying attention.
Instead, I was following the hands of a clock mounted on the doctor's wall. They were both speeding up and slowing down. I was slipping further and further away, a levitating camera in a video game merging with the code that it was running on. Again with the binary, with the electronic circuits on. I closed my eyes and let my sensations lead me. First, I spent some time with my bones. Among their many functions, I got lost in their continuous breathing, an uninterrupted flow of calcium absorbed and released. Even my skeleton was alive and living, in and of itself. I could feel my mind clinging to the known, to the cluttering thoughts, the buzzing of memories and fears of the future. But for each breath, tension was released, and my shoulders sunk comfortably. It had certainly felt like I was in there, somewhere behind my face. But I was nowhere to be found. And the more I looked, the more hazy I became.
The more hazy I became. Ist das eine Story vielleicht von irgendwem? Ich meine, die haben den Doktor erwähnt, einen Arzt. Ist hier irgendwas zugestoßen? Ich Ich meine, es hört sich mehr und mehr an wie, als würde jemand sein wahres Ich verstecken. Und nicht wie Schizophrenie oder Desorientierung, Dissortation, sondern mehr wie fehlende Fähigkeit von dem Aussprechen von Gedanken.
When my eyelids eventually opened, they felt as slow as a sunrise. Photons converted to mirror signals shooting along the optic nerve, each carrying a piece of information into the darkness. The brain categorized motion, color, edges, distance. I sat for a moment in the dusk, watching the sunrise. When the world eventually lit up, I was no longer wondering why matter lights up from the inside. My experience had changed from the fire to the light it emits. But it would get much stranger still.
But it would much, es wird noch komischer. Wieso sammeln wir überhaupt einen Haufen Blumen? Wieso sind wir hier in diesem Wald? Ich dachte, das wäre hier ein Pflanzensimulator. Fragen über Fragen. Aber irgendwo muss es doch Antworten geben, nicht?
As the moment stretched, I started daydreaming. Or so I thought. It began as a shimmering field, creeping slowly in from the periphery of my vision. The hands of the clock still moving, but among them, vague shapes. Slowly, but surely, I saw trees flowing past me, and among them, myself, sitting right there in the doctor's office with a vacant expression. While walking around myself, I was surprised to still see the clock straight ahead. Myself from the side, the clock on the wall. The two images were not overlapping, they just coexisted. Like imagining a familiar place with your eyes closed and you see both nothing and something at the same time. I turned to look towards myself, but saw only the face of the doctor, lingering somewhere between confusion, concern, and annoyance. However, when I studied his face closer, I was struck by terror. The image of myself had turned to look straight into my own eyes. I felt my own hand reach out towards myself, the weight of my hand landing softly on my shoulder. Eyes distant, looking at the doctor, looking at myself, rules and boundaries disappearing.
Okay. Scheint, als wären wir auf einem echt miesen Trip gewesen. Also, ich will ja nicht sagen, aber bis jetzt habe ich noch nicht so das Gefühl, dass hier ist ein Baumsimulator. Oh, was ist das denn für eine Pflanze? Nice.
The fire was spreading. A delicate wave of nostalgia washing over me. Intimate recollections of past sorrow, relationships, education, and even medical experience. And at last, I was no longer alone. Not in the sense that the doctor was there in the room, but rather that we were together in the darkness of my mind. A vast number of sensations were still flowing, but now with two observers to share the burden.
Beobachter. Was ist da los? Was ist mit dieser Person? Was ist das für ein Moment?
Somewhere, out of sight, a hand
picked me up. And as I kept breathing, the fire kept spreading. Soon, it swallowed my parents sitting in their chairs, doubting my story. I felt contradicting opinions and ideas coexist, but not in conflict. Different notes in harmonious chords, shaping a balanced, indivisible whole. More clouds spread into my vision, and more sensations through my body. The music was evolving. I looked at my hand. 5 fingers against a surface felt no different than 5 bodies or minds. Branches becoming aware that they were connected to the same trunk all along. Their experience my own, all of them present in my mind.
Okay, ich versuche hier gerade noch ein bisschen klarzukommen. Nächstes Mal geht's weiter. Ich wünsche dir was. Bis zum nächsten Mal. Tschüss.